Welcome to Marple Whispers. I'm Sean. Tell me, where are you listening from right now? And what time is it there? I'd love to know. Share it in the comments along with how you liked the story. I reply to every single one of you. Now let's step into the mystery. In the shadow of Moscow's glittering lights, a chilling murder unfolds, and only one mind can unravel its secrets. Miss Jane Marple, the unassuming spinster from St. Mary Mead, steps into a web of deceit when a stranger is stabbed under Red Square's glow, clutching a clue to a lost Fabergé egg. As greed, betrayal, and hidden diamonds surface, suspects Irina, the nervous heiress, Victor, the brash tycoon, Elena, the vengeful ballerina, and Ivanov, the secretive doctor, cast long shadows of guilt. With a cryptic note, a jeweled blade, and smudged ink, Miss Marple weaves through lies to expose a killer, proving that even in Moscow's grandeur, human nature hides no secrets from her piercing gaze. Chapter 1. The Unexpected Invitation. The rhythmic clatter of the train wheels had lulled Miss Jane Marple into a contemplative doze, her mind drifting through the familiar lanes of St. Mary Mead, even as the vast Russian landscape blurred past the window. At 82, she was no stranger to the quiet rhythms of village life, gossip over tea, the subtle undercurrents of envy and ambition that simmered beneath polite smiles. Yet here she was, embarking on an adventure that felt as improbable as one of her nephew's novels. The letter from Raymond West had arrived like a bolt from a clear sky. Aunt Jane, your keen eye is needed in Moscow. Joan's cousin Irina is entangled in a web of family secrets, lost heirlooms, dubious alliances. Come at once. Your wisdom could untangle it all. Moscow announced itself with a sudden jolt as the train pulled into Leningradsky Station, the platform alive with a cacophony of voices in languages that danced just beyond her grasp. Steam hissed from the engine like a conspiratorial whisper, and the air carried the sharp tang of coal smoke mingled with the faint exotic spice of street vendors' pirozhki. Miss Marple gathered her modest valise, her black handbag clutched firmly, and stepped down into the throng. The station's grand arches loomed overhead, adorned with Soviet-era murals of heroic workers, a far cry from the cozy thatched roofs back home. How vast it all is, she murmured to herself, adjusting her spectacles. Like the ambitions of young Mr. Hargreaves, who built that ostentatious manor only to hide his debts. Raymond was waiting, his diplomat's overcoat impeccable, though his face betrayed a flicker of anxiety beneath the warm smile. Aunt Jane, you made it? Splendid. The journey wasn't too taxing, I hope. He enveloped her in a quick embrace, his cologne a reassuring note of English refinement amid the foreign bustle. Not at all, dear boy, she replied, her voice steady and mild. Trains are excellent for thinking. And your letter, such intrigue. Tell me more about this cousin of Joan's. As they navigated the crowd toward a waiting black Volga car, Raymond sketched the details in hushed tones. Irina Petrova, Joan's distant relative from the White Russian émigré branch, had resurfaced after years in obscurity, claiming ties to pre-revolutionary aristocracy. Now in Moscow on some vague business, she'd confided in Joan about a missing family artifact, a priceless relic rumored to hold secrets worth killing for. It's all rather melodramatic, Raymond admitted, helping her into the car. But Irina's associates, well, they're a mixed lot. Victor Lang, an American oil tycoon with a finger in every pie. Elena Kuznetsova, her companion, a faded ballerina with a sharp tongue. And Dr. Sergei Ivanov, a physician who's forever quoting poetry. You'll meet them tonight at dinner. The drive to the Hotel Metropole wove through Moscow's broad avenues, where the last rays of the autumn sun gilded the onion domes of churches and the stern facades of Stalinist skyscrapers. Billboards flashed in Cyrillic, and the traffic hummed with a purposeful energy that made Miss Marple think of bees in a hive, each with their own hidden agendas. The hotel itself rose like a fairy tale palace, its Art Nouveau curves and mosaics a testament to bygone elegance. Inside, the lobby gleamed with crystal chandeliers and marble floors, echoing with the soft murmur of international guests. A porter whisked her bags away, and Raymond escorted her to a suite overlooking Tverskaya Street, where the city's lights were just beginning to wink on like watchful eyes. "Rest up, Aunt Jane," Raymond said, kissing her cheek. "Dinner at 8 in the dining room. Joan's thrilled you're here. She says you're better than any detective." Left alone, Miss Marple unpacked with deliberate care, laying out her knitting needles and a skein of soft grey wool. She peered out the window at the bustling street below, where fur-hatted pedestrians hurried against the gathering dusk. People are much the same the world over, she reflected, settling into an armchair. That American Victor, ambitious no doubt, like the mill owner in St. Mary Mead who charmed everyone while plotting ruin. And the ballerina, Grace hiding bitterness, perhaps. One must watch the eyes. They always betray. By 8, the dining room was a symphony of clinking crystal and subdued laughter, its walls adorned with frescoes of mythical scenes. Raymond and Joan greeted her warmly, Joan in a simple pearl necklace that spoke of understated taste. They were seated at a round table near a grand piano, where a musician coaxed melancholic notes from the keys. Irina Petrova arrived first, a vision in emerald silk that accentuated her Slavic features. High cheekbones, dark hair swept into an elegant chignon, and eyes that held a storm of unspoken worries. "Miss Marple," she said, extending a gloved hand with a smile that didn't quite reach those eyes. "Raymond speaks so highly of you. It's an honor to have such a perceptive guest in our midst." "The pleasure is mine, my dear," Miss Marple replied, her own smile gentle. "I've always found family matters most fascinating. Do tell me about this heirloom of yours." Before Irina could respond, Victor Lang boomed into the room, his broad shoulders straining a tailored suit, a gold watch chain glinting like a warning. "Evening, folks. Irina, you look stunning as ever." He clapped Raymond on the back with enough force to rattle the silverware, then turned to Miss Marple. "And you must be the famous aunt? Heard you're a whiz at puzzles. Well, Moscow's full of 'em. Oil deals, politics, you name it." Elena Kuznetsova slipped in quietly behind him, her lithe frame clad in black, a string of amber beads at her throat. Once a prima ballerina with the Bolshoi, her movements still held a dancer's poise, but her face bore the lines of disappointments etched deep. She nodded curtly, her gaze flicking over the group like a critic assessing a flawed performance. "Good evening," she murmured, taking a seat beside Irina with proprietary closeness. Last came Dr. Sergei Ivanov, a slender man in his 50s with wire-rimmed glasses and a neatly trimmed beard, carrying a faint scent of antiseptics and old books. "Ah, the illustrious Miss Marple," he said, bowing slightly. "In Russia, we appreciate those who see beyond the surface. As Pushkin wrote, the heart has its own secrets." The meal unfolded with bowls of rich borscht, tender blini topped with caviar, and glasses of chilled vodka that Irina raised in a toast to old friends and new mysteries. Conversation flowed. Victor's tales of Siberian oil fields, Elena's reminiscences of stage triumphs, Ivanov's poetic asides on the human condition, Joan chatted animatedly about London life, while Raymond steered topics with diplomatic finesse. Miss Marple listened more than she spoke, her needles clicking a steady counterpoint as she worked on a scarf. She noted Victor's hand lingering too long on Irina's arm, a gesture of possession rather than affection. Elena's fingers tightened on her fork when Irina laughed at one of Victor's jokes, a flash of jealousy as raw as any village rivalry. Ivanov's eyes behind those glasses darted occasionally to his pocket watch, as if time itself were an adversary. And Irina, her napkin twisted into knots under the table, a sure sign of inner turmoil. "Such a lively group," Miss Marple said at last, her voice cutting through a lull like a gentle probe. "Reminds me of a gathering back home, where everyone seemed so amiable, until the truth emerged. People do wear such convincing masks, don't they?" The table fell silent for a heartbeat, eyes meeting and sliding away. Outside, the Moscow lights glittered coldly, casting long shadows across the room. Little did they know, those shadows were harbingers of the darkness to come. Chapter 2. Shadows in Red Square. The Moscow evening wrapped Miss Jane Marple in a chill that was as much atmospheric as meteorological, the October air sharp with the promise of snow. Raymond had insisted on a nighttime tour of the city's heart, his enthusiasm as infectious as it was impractical for an elderly lady accustomed to the quiet evenings of St. Mary Mead. "Aunt Jane, you simply must see the Kremlin under the lights," he declared, his diplomat's charm smoothing over any protest. "It's like stepping into a fairy tale, only grander." Joan, ever supportive, nodded eagerly, her arm tucked through his as they led the group from the Hotel Metropole's gilded warmth into the crisp night. The party was a motley assembly, their footsteps echoing on the pavement as they crossed Theatre Square toward Red Square. Irina Petrova walked with a purposeful grace, her fur-trimmed coat catching the glow of street lamps, her arm linked with Victor Lang's. The American businessman's hearty laugh rang out as he recounted a tale of outsmarting a Siberian competitor, his voice carrying the brash confidence of a man who measured success in dollars and deals. Behind them, Elena Kuznetsova moved with the measured steps of a retired ballerina, her dark scarf fluttering like a mourning veil, her eyes scanning the group with a wariness that Miss Marple found all too familiar. Dr. Sergei Ivanov brought up the rear, his scholarly demeanor tempered by a nervous habit of adjusting his glasses, his murmured quotes from Lermontov barely audible over the city's hum. Red Square unfolded before them like a vast stage set for drama, its cobblestones gleaming under floodlights that bathed St. Basil's Cathedral in a riot of colour. The cathedral's onion dome swirled like sugared confections against the velvet sky, and tourists milled about, their cameras flashing like fireflies. A guide, a stout woman with a megaphone, herded her group toward the Lenin Mausoleum, reciting historical facts with mechanical precision. Miss Marple, leaning lightly on Raymond's arm, absorbed it all, the grandeur, the crowds, the undercurrents of tension among her companions. "It's quite splendid," she remarked softly, "but crowds do mask so much, don't they? Like the fete in St. Mary Mead, where everyone smiled, yet one planned a theft." Irina paused near the gum department store, its arched facade aglow with festive lights. "This place holds memories," she said, her voice tinged with melancholy. "My grandfather stood here before the revolution, dreaming of a Russia that no longer exists." Victor squeezed her arm, a gesture that seemed more proprietary than comforting. "History's just a backdrop, Irina. It's the future we're after." Elena, lingering by a lamppost, shot him a glance sharp enough to cut glass, while Ivanov checked his watch yet again, his lips moving silently as if reciting a private litany. They drifted toward the mausoleum, where the lights dimmed for a historical reenactment, soldiers in period costumes marching in solemn cadence. The crowd pressed closer, their breath misting in the cold. Miss Marple's keen eyes noted the group's dynamics. Victor's hand never left Irina's elbow. Elena's posture stiffened when Irina laughed, and Ivanov's gaze flicked toward the shadows beyond the square, as if expecting someone. People reveal themselves in crowds, she mused, her knitting bag swinging gently at her side. Like the butcher's wife, who betrayed her guilt by avoiding her rival's gaze. A sudden piercing cry shattered the air, raw and desperate, slicing through the reenactment's drumbeat. The crowd parted like a curtain, revealing a man staggering from the shadowed edge of the square, his hands clutching his chest. Blood seeped through his fingers, staining his white shirt a vivid crimson, stark against the tweed of his coat. He stumbled forward, his face a mask of shock, eyes wide and unseeing, before collapsing under a glaring floodlight, his body crumpling like a marionette with cut strings. A crumpled envelope fluttered from his hand, landing in a pool of light. Gasps rippled through the crowd. A woman screamed, her voice swallowed by the wail of approaching sirens. Raymond pulled Joan close, his face pale. Irina froze, her hand flying to her mouth, while Victor muttered a curse under his breath. Elena stepped back, her eyes darting to the fallen man, then away, as if the sight burned. Ivanov knelt beside the stranger, his physician's instincts taking over, though his hands trembled as he checked for a pulse. "He's gone," he pronounced, his voice hollow. A single stab wound, straight to the heart. Police descended swiftly, their blue uniforms a stark contrast to the square's festive glow. Inspector Dmitri Volkov, a broad-shouldered man with a moustache like a steel brush, took a command with the efficiency of a man accustomed to chaos. He retrieved the envelope, revealing a British passport inside. "Arthur Harrington," he read aloud, his accent thick but precise. "Anyone know this man?" Irina's face drained of colour, her gloved hands twisting together. He contacted me yesterday," she stammered. "Said he had information about my family's lost Fabergé egg, a priceless heirloom. He wanted to meet privately." Victor's jaw tightened, his eyes narrowing. "A con man, no doubt. I told her not to trust him." Elena's lips pressed into a thin line, her gaze fixed on the cobblestones. Ivanov stood, brushing dirt from his knees, his expression unreadable. Miss Marple stepped closer, her small frame unassuming yet alert. She peered at the body, noting the precision of the wound, clean, deliberate, the work of someone who knew exactly where to strike. The envelope, now in Volkov's hands, bore a faint smudge of ink, barely noticeable. "Such a neat strike," she murmured to Raymond, her voice low. "Not the work of impulse. Reminds me of the gardener in St. Mary Mead, who used a pruning knife with surgical care to settle a score." Volkov barked orders, dispersing the crowd and cordoning off the scene. He turned to the group, his eyes sharp as flint. "You are all nearby. I'll need statements at the hotel. No one leaves Moscow until we sort this out." The reenactment soldiers stood frozen, their muskets lowered as if saluting the dead. The Moscow lights, once festive, now cast long, accusing shadows across the square, their glow cold and unforgiving. As the group was herded back to the Metropole, Miss Marple lagged slightly, her eyes lingering on the envelope in Volkov's hand. She noted Irina's trembling fingers, Victor's clenched fists, Elena's averted gaze, and Ivanov's hurried steps. A murder in such a public place, she thought, yet so personal. Like the vicar's sister, who poisoned the tea tray in plain sight, trusting the crowd to hide her deed. Her knitting bag swung gently, a silent promise that she would unravel this tangled skein, thread by bloody thread. Back at the hotel, the grand dining room felt oppressive, its chandeliers dimmed by the weight of what had transpired. Inspector Volkov set up a makeshift interrogation space in a private parlour, his notebook open, his pen poised. Miss Marple settled into a corner armchair, her needles clicking softly, her mind already weaving patterns from the fragments of the night. The Moscow lights twinkled outside, but in Red Square a stranger lay dead, and secrets stirred in the shadows, waiting for her to bring them to light. Chapter 3. Whispers in the Tea Room. The morning after the murder in Red Square, the Hotel Metropole's tea room was a study in strained civility, its rosewood panelling and gilt mirrors reflecting a subdued gathering of guests. The air was thick with the scent of brewing samovars and the murmur of speculation, as if the very walls absorbed the whispers of scandal. Miss Jane Marple sat in a cushioned armchair near a window overlooking the snowy bustle of Tverskaya Street, her knitting needles clicking a steady rhythm, her serene demeanour a stark contrast to the unease that hung over the table where Raymond, Joan, and their companions sipped tea. The events of the previous night had cast a pall, and the arrival of Inspector Dmitri Volkov, his moustache bristling with purpose, only deepened the tension. Miss Marple's eyes, bright and unyielding behind her spectacles, missed nothing. She noted Irina Petrova's pallor, her emerald scarf knotted tightly as if to ward off more than the Moscow chill. Victor Lang, his broad frame hunched over a cup of black tea, puffed on a cigar, the smoke curling like a question mark. Elena Kuznetsova sat rigidly, her amber beads catching the light as her fingers toyed with a teaspoon, her gaze flitting to the door with the alertness of a hunted doe. Dr. Sergei Ivanov, his scholarly air frayed, sipped his tea with unsteady, hands quoting Turgenev under his breath. "The heart is a dark forest." Miss Marple smiled faintly. Indeed, she thought, and forests hide many secrets, like the spinster in St. Mary Mead who buried her shame in the vicarage garden. Inspector Volkov, stationed at a nearby table, conducted his interviews with the precision of a chess master. He summoned Irina first, his notebook open, his pen scratching like an accusation. Irina's voice trembled as she recounted her connection to Arthur Harrington. "He emailed me 3 weeks ago," she said, twisting her scarf. "Claimed he was an antique dealer with proof of my family's lost Fabergé egg, a treasure my grandfather smuggled out during the Revolution. He wanted a private meeting, said it was urgent." Her eyes darted to Victor, who scowled, his cigar smouldering. "I told Victor everything. He didn't trust Harrington." Volkov's gaze sharpened. "And this meeting, did it happen?" "Only briefly, yesterday afternoon," Irina admitted. "He showed me a photograph of the egg but demanded payment to reveal its location. Victor interrupted us, and Harrington left in a huff." Victor was next, his voice booming with indignation. "The man was a swindler," he declared, stubbing out his cigar. "I told Irina he was after her money. I met him in the hotel bar to warn him off. Yes, we argued, but I didn't touch him. His alibi was flimsy. A phone call to a business associate in Houston, unverified due to the late hour in Texas." Miss Marple noted a faint ink stain on his cuff, barely visible against the dark fabric of his suit. Curious, she thought. like the stain on the curate's sleeve that betrayed his midnight letter-writing. Elena's interview was brief but revealing. She admitted knowing Harrington years ago, when he swindled her late husband in a forged art deal. "He ruined us," she said, her voice low, her eyes glinting with old rage. "I saw him lurking near the hotel yesterday watching Irina. I wanted nothing to do with him." Her alibi? She claimed to have been in her room, alone, during the murder, a statement as unverifiable as Victor's. Miss Marple's needles paused as she spotted a torn ticket stub protruding from Elena's purse. A cinema ticket, perhaps, or something less innocent. Dr. Ivanov's turn came last. He leaned back, adjusting his glasses, his tone measured. "I was checking my phone during the tour," he said. "A patient in St. Petersburg needed advice." Volkov raised an eyebrow, noting the lack of a call log to confirm it. Ivanov's hands, Miss Marple observed, trembled slightly, and his cufflinks bore a monogram that matched a faint mark on Harrington's envelope. "Details," she mused, "like the monogrammed handkerchief that undid the mayor's wife in St. Mary Mead." As Volkov dismissed the group to continue his inquiries elsewhere, Miss Marple invited Irina for a quiet word by the Shin samovar. "My dear," she said gently, "people often hide their fears behind brave words. Tell me, was Harrington's claim about the egg genuine?" Irina hesitated, then shook her head. "I wanted to believe it. My family's stories always spoke of a lost treasure, but he seemed too eager. Victor thought it was a scam, but Elena, she said she knew Harrington from before, and he was dangerous." Miss Marple nodded, her mind turning over the threads of motive. She excused herself to visit the hotel's concierge, inquiring about local antique dealers. The concierge, a wiry man with a penchant for gossip, mentioned Harrington's reputation as a shady broker who dealt in questionable artifacts. "He was seen with a man in a doctor's coat yesterday," he confided, "near the Bolshoi." Miss Marple thanked him, her thoughts drifting to Ivanov's nervous demeanour. Later, Volkov shared a breakthrough. A search of Harrington's modest room at a nearby hostel had yielded a cryptic note tucked inside a book of Russian poetry. It read, "The egg cracks at midnight. Beware the dancer's shadow." The words sent a ripple through the group when shared discreetly with Raymond. Irina gasped. Victor swore. Elena's face remained impassive, and Ivanov's fingers tightened on his teacup. Miss Marple's eyes gleamed. "A dancer's shadow," she murmured. "How poetic, yet how precise. Like the riddle in the village fete that pointed to the thief." She requested to see the note, her fingers brushing the paper as she studied its hurried scrawl. The ink matched the stain on Victor's cuff, and the paper bore a faint scent of antiseptic, familiar, perhaps, from Ivanov's presence. Clues are like stitches, she thought, small, but they hold the pattern together. She also recalled Elena's torn ticket stub, wondering if it tied to a late-night errand or a meeting gone wrong. As the tea room emptied, Miss Marple lingered, her knitting a pretext for observation. She overheard Victor muttering to Irina, "If that egg exists, it's ours to find, not the police's." Elena, passing by, paused as if to eavesdrop, her amber beads clicking softly. Ivanov, meanwhile, slipped out to the lobby, his phone pressed to his ear, his voice too low to catch. Miss Marple's needles resumed their rhythm, each click a step closer to truth. "Murder is a performance," she reflected, "and every performer leaves a trace, like the seamstress who left a thread on the stolen jewels." Outside, the Moscow snow fell softly, blanketing the city in silence, but within the tea room, whispers of guilt and deception swirled, waiting for Miss Marple's gentle hand to unravel them. The stage was set, the players unmasked, and the truth, like the city's hidden alleys, lay just out of sight, ready to be illuminated. Chapter 4. The Hidden Gallery. The pale Moscow sun struggled through a veil of clouds, casting a muted glow over the city as Miss Jane Marple suggested an outing to the Tretyakov Gallery. "A bit of art might soothe our nerves," she said, her voice as mild as the herbal tea she sipped at breakfast. The group, still shaken by Arthur Harrington's murder in Red Square, agreed with reluctant nods, their faces betraying the strain of Inspector Volkov's ongoing interrogations. Miss Marple's suggestion was less about aesthetics than observation. Galleries, like village halls, were places where people revealed themselves unwittingly, their masks slipping amid beauty and distraction. One sees so much in a crowd, she thought, recalling the St. Mary Mead art show, where a stolen brooch was pinned to the wrong dress. The Tretyakov Gallery, with its labyrinth of rooms filled with Russian icons and brooding landscapes, was a treasure trove of history and human nature. The group wandered through halls lined with gilded frames, the air heavy with the scent of polished wood and old canvas. Irina Petrova, in a navy coat that accentuated her pallor, clung to Victor Lang's arm, her eyes darting as if expecting Harrington's ghost to emerge from the shadows. Victor, his usual bluster subdued, scanned the crowds with a businessman's wariness, his gold watch glinting under the gallery's soft lights. Elena Kuznetsova moved with a dancer's grace, her black shawl trailing like a mourning veil, her gaze lingering on paintings of ballerinas, with a mix of nostalgia and resentment. Dr. Sergei Ivanov, his scholarly air frayed by sleeplessness, paused often to read placards, though his fingers fidgeted with a pen that bore the same monogram as the one on Harrington's envelope. Miss Marple, feigning fatigue, settled on a cushioned bench near a dramatic Repin painting of a stormy sea, her knitting bag at her side. From this vantage, she watched the group's interactions like a hawk observing a field. Victor drew Irina aside, his voice low but urgent. "You should have let me deal with Harrington from the start," he hissed, his hand gripping her elbow. "Now the police are digging into my contracts." Irina's lips tightened, but she murmured something placating, her eyes flicking toward Elena, who stood nearby, ostensibly admiring a portrait but clearly eavesdropping. Ivanov lingered by a canvas depicting a ballerina mid-pirouette, his expression wistful as he muttered, "The stage is a cruel mistress, yet it never forgets." Miss Marple's needles clicked softly. "Words conceal as much as they reveal," she mused, like the poetess in St. Mary Mead, who hid her thefts behind flowery verses. A subtle movement caught her eye. Elena slipping a small glass vial into her bag, its label obscured but glinting faintly in the gallery's light. Perfume, perhaps, or something less benign. Miss Marple recalled a similar vial listed among Harrington's effects, its contents untested. She made a mental note, her thoughts drifting to the chemist's assistant in her village who swapped labels to poison a rival. Careless gestures betray careful plans, she reflected, adjusting her spectacles to better observe Eleanor's tense posture. As the group moved to a room of sombre icons, Raymond and Joan lingered near Miss Marple, their faces drawn. "Aunt Jane, this business is dreadful," Joan whispered. "Irina's a wreck, and Victor's temper is making things worse." Raymond nodded, his diplomatic calm fraying. "The police are circling like wolves. Volkov mentioned fingerprints on that envelope. Irina's, but smudged oddly." Miss Marple's eyes gleamed. "Smudged fingerprints are like smudged ink in a love letter," she said softly. They suggest a story rewritten in haste. The gallery's atmosphere grew heavier as the group approached a display of jeweled artifacts, their opulence a stark contrast to the murder's grim reality. Irina paused before a case of Fabergé-inspired trinkets, her fingers brushing the glass as if seeking her family's lost egg. Victor hovered close, his voice a low growl. "If that egg's real, Irina, it's our ticket out of this mess." Elena, nearby, flinched at the words, her hand tightening on her bag. Ivanov, meanwhile, drifted to a corner, his phone buzzing faintly, though he silenced it with a guilty glance. Miss Marple rose, her small frame unassuming as she approached Eleanor. "Such beautiful art," she remarked, her tone conversational. "Does it remind you of your dancing days, Miss Kuznetsova?" Elena's smile was brittle. "It reminds me of lost chances," she said, her voice sharp. "Some men destroy dreams without a thought." Her words hung in the air, heavy with implication. And Miss Marple noted the venom, directed not at the paintings, but at a memory, perhaps of Harrington. Back at the Metropole, Inspector Volkov awaited with new findings. The autopsy revealed Harrington had ingested a mild sedative before his death, enough to dull his reflexes, but not to kill. The stab wound, delivered with surgical precision, suggested a blade like a letter opener, narrow and deadly. More troubling, the envelope's fingerprints were indeed Irina's, but their smudged edges hinted at manipulation. Someone had handled it after the fact. Volkov's eyes narrowed on Irina, who protested, "I never touched it. He showed me the photo, that's all." Victor's scowl deepened, and Eleanor's gaze dropped to her lap, her fingers tracing the edge of that torn ticket stub Miss Marple had noticed earlier. A new lead emerged. A street vendor near Red Square had seen Harrington arguing with a man in a doctor's coat hours before the murder. Their voices raised over "a deal gone sour." Ivanov paled at the news, his hand straying to his monogrammed pen. Miss Marple's mind whirred, connecting threads: the sedative, the antiseptic scent, the monogram. A doctor's coat is a costume as much as a uniform, she thought, recalling the village pharmacist who donned a white coat to mask his pilfering. As the group dispersed, Miss Marple lingered in the tea room, her knitting a pretext for reflection. She approached the concierge, inquiring about local cinemas, suspecting Elena's ticket stub held a clue. The concierge confirmed a late-night showing near the Bolshoi, but added, "That area's popular with less savoury types, dealers, you know." Miss Marple thanked him, her thoughts turning to the note about the dancer's shadow. Was it literal, pointing to Elena's past, or metaphorical, hinting at a hidden ally? The day waned, and the Moscow sky darkened, snowflakes swirling like unanswered questions. Miss Marple's needles clicked faster, each stitch a step toward clarity. Murder is a canvas, she mused, painted in bold strokes, but revealed in the smallest details. Like the widow who betrayed her crime with a single dropped hairpin. The gallery had shown her more than art. It had shown her motives, jealousies, and secrets waiting to be framed. As she retired to her room, the city's lights flickered outside, a constellation of clues guiding her toward the truth there. Chapter 5. Midnight Rendezvous. The Hotel Metropole's corridors were hushed in the small hours, the grandeur of its chandeliers dimmed to a soft glow, casting shadows that danced like conspirators on the ornate wallpaper. Miss Jane Marple, unable to sleep, had slipped from her room, her sensible shoes silent on the thick carpet. The murder of Arthur Harrington lingered in her mind, its threads, sedatives, smudged fingerprints, cryptic notes, tangling like the skeins of wool in her knitting bag. She often found that the quiet of midnight revealed truths daylight obscured, much like the St. Mary Mead widow who confessed her sins under the cover of darkness. Tonight, Moscow's secrets beckoned. She paused near the grand staircase, her small frame blending into the shadows, when a faint murmur reached her ears from the direction of Irina Petrova's suite. The door was slightly ajar, spilling a sliver of light into the hall. Miss Marple edged closer, her movements as unobtrusive as a village gossip, peering through lace curtains. Inside, Victor Lang's voice rumbled, low and urgent. "Irina, that egg could be worth millions, diamonds, not just some trinket. If Harrington had it, we could have split the profits and been done with this mess." Irina's reply was sharp, tinged with fear. "Hush, Victor. Elena knows too much. She worked with him before. If she talks—" The words trailed off into a tense silence, broken only by the clink of a glass. Miss Marple's lips pursed. Greed and fear, she thought. A potent brew, like the poison stirred into the vicar's tea by a desperate soul. She retreated softly, her mind cataloguing the exchange. Victor's ambition was clear, but Irina's mention of Elena suggested layers of betrayal yet to be unravelled. Descending to the lobby, she found it nearly deserted, save for Elena Kuznetsova, who stood by a window overlooking the snow-dusted streets. The former ballerina's silhouette was stark against the city's twinkling lights, her amber beads glinting as she turned at Miss Marple's approach. "Can't sleep, Miss Kuznetsova?" Miss Marple asked, her voice gentle, inviting confidence. Elena's smile was strained, her eyes haunted. "Sleep eludes me," she admitted. "Harrington's death stirs old wounds. He ruined my life, my husband's too, with his schemes. I wanted to expose him, not—" She stopped, her fingers tightening on her shawl. "Exposure can be as sharp as a blade," Miss Marple said softly, her eyes noting the faint tremor in Eleanor's hands. "In my village, a shopkeeper thought to expose a rival, only to find herself ensnared by her own secrets." Elena's gaze flickered, but she offered no more, murmuring a good night before slipping away. A sudden creak from the stairwell drew Miss Marple's attention. Dr. Sergei Ivanov emerged, his coat dishevelled, his glasses askew. Mud clung to his shoes, fresh and dark, as if he'd been out in the city's wet streets. "Oh, Miss Marple," he said, startled, adjusting his glasses. "Just a walk to clear my head. Moscow's ghosts are restless tonight." His attempt at a smile faltered, and Miss Marple noted the mud's texture, similar to the soil near Red Square. "Ghosts indeed," she replied, her tone mild. "They often point to the living, don't they? Like the footprints that led to the sexton's guilt in St. Mary Mead." The next morning, the tea-room buzzed with nervous energy as Inspector Dmitry Volkov summoned the group for updates. His moustache twitched as he revealed a damning discovery. A jeweled letter opener, its handle engraved with Irina's initials, found in Victor's suitcase during a police search. The blade matched the wound that killed Harrington, narrow, precise, deadly. Victor's face reddened, his fists clenching. "It's a frame!" he roared. "I never saw that thing before. Someone planted it." Irina gasped, her hand flying to her throat, while Elena's eyes narrowed, her lips a thin line. Ivanov adjusted his glasses, his face impassive but pale. Miss Marple, seated in her usual corner, knitted steadily, her mind racing. Too convenient, she thought, like the dagger left in the blacksmith's shed to implicate him in a theft he didn't commit. She requested to see the letter opener, noting its polished surface bore no fingerprints. A curious absence for an object allegedly handled in a crime. The engraving, she observed, was fresh, the letters slightly uneven, as if hastily done. A prop in a play, she mused, staged to mislead. Volkov shared another clue. Harrington's hotel room had yielded a map, tucked inside the same book of poetry as the cryptic note about the dancer's shadow. The map sketched a route to a hidden vault beneath the city, near the old Kitaigorod district, marked with a single word, midnight. Irina's eyes widened, and Victor muttered, "He was on to something real." Elena's fingers twitched, and Ivanov's pen paused mid-scribble. Miss Marple's needles clicked faster. A vault suggests treasure, she thought, but also traps, like the cellar where the grocer hid his stolen goods, only to be caught by his own greed. She approached Raymond later, her voice low. "Dear boy, this map intrigues me. People hide treasures, but also truths. Have you noticed how our friends guard their secrets?" Raymond frowned, his diplomatic composure fraying. Aunt Jane, Irina's terrified, Victor's furious, and Eleanor's hiding something. Ivanov's jumpy. Did you see his shoes last night? Miss Marple nodded, her mind turning to the mud, the antiseptic scent, the smudged fingerprints. Details, Raymond, are like stitches in a quilt. They seem small, but they hold the pattern. Seeking further insight, she visited the concierge again, inquiring about Kitaigorod. The wiry man leaned in, his voice conspiratorial. "That area's old, full of tunnels from Tsarist times. Smugglers used them, and worse. Harrington was seen there 2 nights ago, with a man in a dark coat." Miss Marple thanked him, her thoughts drifting to Ivanov's midnight wanderings. A dark coat? Or perhaps a doctor's, she pondered, recalling the village doctor who moonlighted as a smuggler, his coat a disguise for darker deeds. As evening fell, Miss Marple lingered in the lobby, her knitting a shield for observation. She overheard Elena on a phone call, her voice sharp. "I told you, it's handled, no more questions." The call ended abruptly as Elena noticed Miss Marple, her face flushing. Victor, meanwhile, paced near the bar, muttering about lost opportunities. Irina, emerging from her suite, looked haggard, her scarf knotted tightly again, a nervous habit Miss Marple noted, like the fidgeting of the St. Mary Mead seamstress who betrayed her theft with a trembling needle. The Moscow snow fell thicker now, blanketing the city in silence, but the hotel hummed with unspoken accusations. Miss Marple's mind wove the clues together. The sedative, the letter opener, the map, the mud. Murder is a performance, she thought, and every performer leaves a cue, like the actress who left her script open to the page that named her crime. The midnight hour had passed, but its secrets lingered, waiting for her gentle hand to draw them into the light. Chapter 6. The Dancer's Secret. The Hotel Metropole's opulent dining room felt oppressive under the weight of suspicion, its chandeliers casting a brittle light over the breakfast tables. Victor Lang's arrest for Arthur Harrington's murder had fractured the group, leaving Irina Petrova pale and trembling, her emerald scarf now a crumpled knot in her hands. Elena, Kuznetsova, usually poised, moved with a restless energy, her amber beads clicking as she paced. Dr. Sergei Ivanov, his scholarly calm unraveling, quoted Dostoevsky in a distracted murmur. "Guilt is a heavy chain." Miss Jane Marple, seated in her corner with her knitting, observed them all, her needles clicking like a metronome counting down to truth. Arrests are often premature, she thought, like the hasty accusation against the St. Mary Mead baker, whose flour-dusted hands hid no crime. Inspector Dmitri Volkov's investigation had intensified, his moustache quivering with determination, as he shared new evidence. The jeweled letter opener, engraved with Irina's initials, bore traces of Harrington's blood, though its polished surface lacked fingerprints. Victor's protests of a frame-up rang hollow against the weapon's damning presence in his suitcase. Yet Miss Marple's mind lingered on the map found in Harrington's room, pointing to a vault in Kitai-Gorod, and the cryptic note, "The egg cracks at midnight. Beware the dancer's shadow." The word dancer nagged at her, its implications dancing just out of reach, like the shadow of the village seamstress who betrayed her theft with a single dropped thread. To ease the tension, Miss Marple proposed a private tea in her suite, inviting Irina, Eleanor, and Ivanov under the guise of soothing their nerves. The room, with its velvet curtains and view of Moscow's snow-draped streets, felt intimate yet charged, like a stage before the curtains rise. As she poured tea from a silver samovar, her voice was gentle but probing. "Let's speak of this Fabergé egg," she said, her eyes flicking between them. "It seems to stir such passions. What did Harrington truly know?" Irina, her hands unsteady, confessed the egg was a family legend, a jewel-encrusted relic rumoured to conceal diamonds smuggled during the Revolution. Harrington claimed he'd found it, she said, but he wanted a fortune to reveal its location. I doubted him, but Victor saw a chance to save his business. Victor, now in custody, had invested heavily in the promise of the egg, she admitted, his oil deals teetering on collapse. Elena's voice was sharp as she interrupted. "Harrington was a liar. He swindled my husband years ago with forged art, leaving us penniless. I knew his game. Documents, promises, all fake." Her eyes burned with old rage, but Miss Marple noted a flicker of fear, as if Eleanor's knowledge ran deeper. "And you, Miss Kuznetsova?" she asked softly. "Did you confront him?" Elena hesitated, then admitted to a heated exchange in the hotel lobby 2 days before the murder. "I threatened to expose his scams," she said, "but I didn't kill him." Ivanov, sipping his tea, revealed a surprising connection. "I knew Harrington too," he admitted, his glasses glinting. "He approached me months ago, needing a sedative for a delicate matter. I supplied it, thinking it harmless, a favour for a colleague." His voice faltered, and Miss Marple's needles paused. A sedative, she thought, like the tonic the village doctor prescribed, unaware it would mask a theft. The autopsy's finding of a sedative in Harrington's system now pointed to Ivanov, but his trembling hands suggested regret, not guilt. As the tea cooled, Miss Marple steered the conversation to the note's dancer's shadow. Elena stiffened, her past as a Bolshoi ballerina a well-known wound. "My career ended because of Harrington," she said bitterly. "A forged contract cost me my place, and a fall broke my ankle." Her limp, subtle but present, drew Miss Marple's eye. "Shadows follow closely," she mused, like the silhouette that betrayed the St. Mary Mead grocer's wife, caught stealing in the moonlight. A breakthrough came later that day when Volkov, his face grim, shared a new lead. A witness near Kitai-Gorod had seen a man in a doctor's coat fleeing the square after the murder, his figure blurred but distinct. Ivanov's face drained of colour, his hand straying to his monogrammed pen. "I was at the hotel," he insisted, but his muddy shoes from the midnight encounter lingered in Miss Marple's memory. She requested to see Harrington's map again, studying its faded lines. A smudge of ink, identical to Victor's cuff stain, marked the vault's location, and a faint antiseptic scent clung to the paper. Ivanov's signature, perhaps. Driven by a hunch, Miss Marple persuaded Raymond to accompany her to the hotel's concierge, who confirmed rumors of underground vaults in Kitai-Gorod, once used by smugglers and spies. Harrington was seen there, the concierge whispered, with a woman not tall but elegant. Miss Marple's thoughts turned to Elena's limp, then Irina's nervous grace. Elegance can mask intent, she reflected, like the vicar's sister, whose charm hid her poison. That evening, a discreet search of Elena's room, authorized by Volkov, uncovered a pair of gloves with faint bloodstains hidden in a drawer. Confronted, Elena's composure cracked. "I followed Harrington that night," she admitted, her voice raw. "I wanted proof of his lies. I saw him argue with someone, a man tall, in a coat. Then he staggered, bleeding. I tried to help, but he was already gone." The gloves, she claimed, were stained from touching him. But Miss Marple's eyes narrowed. The stab was from behind, she thought, and Elena's height doesn't match the angle. Like the maid who lied about a spill to cover her theft. Volkov's focus shifted to Ivanov, whose alibi wavered under scrutiny. His phone records showed no patient calls, and the mud on his shoes matched Red Square's soil. Yet Miss Marple sensed a deeper pattern. The gloves, the sedative, the letter opener, all pointed to a careful orchestration, not a single culprit. Murder is a tapestry, she mused, woven by many hands, like the quilt that hid the village thief's loot. As night fell, Moscow's lights glittered like a web of stars, each a clue in the darkness. Miss Marple retired to her suite, her knitting a rhythm of deduction. She recalled Irina's knotted scarf, Victor's stained cuff, Elena's bloodied gloves, Ivanov's muddy shoes. Each a thread, she thought, but the pattern is incomplete, like the St. Mary Mead spinster, whose lies unraveled when her needle pricked the truth. The dancer's shadow loomed, not just Elena's past, but a metaphor for betrayal, cast by someone still hidden in the light. The vault awaited, and with it, the key to Harrington's death, ready for Miss Marple's gentle unravelling. Chapter 7. The Cracking Egg. The Hotel Metropole's Grand Lounge, with its soaring ceilings and velvet drapes, seemed to hold its breath as Miss Jane Marple took centre stage, her small, unassuming figure a stark contrast to the opulence around her. The chandeliers cast a golden glow, but the atmosphere was taut, as if the very air anticipated the unravelling of a deadly knot. Inspector Dmitri Volkov had reluctantly agreed to her request for a gathering, his stern gaze sweeping over the assembled group. Irina Petrova, her face pale and drawn. Elena Kuznetsova, her amber beads still as she sat rigid. Dr. Sergei Ivanov, his glasses fogging with nervous perspiration. And Raymond and Joan West, watching their aunt with a mix of awe and apprehension. Victor Lang, still detained, was absent, but his shadow loomed large. The jeweled letter opener bearing Irina's initials, a silent accuser, in Volkov's evidence bag. Miss Marple's voice, soft yet commanding, cut through the tension like a needle through silk. Murder, you see, is like a Fabergé egg, beautifully crafted, but hollow until its secrets are cracked open. She paused, her eyes scanning each face, her knitting folded neatly in her lap. Mr. Harrington's death was no random act, but a performance, staged under Moscow's lights to conceal a deeper truth. Let us examine the pieces. She began with Harrington himself, no mere antique dealer, but a blackmailer, weaving a web of greed and fear. He dangled the promise of a Fabergé egg, she said, not just a trinket, but a vessel for smuggled diamonds, a legacy of Irina's grandfather. This was no myth, but a lure to exploit each of you. Irina's hands twisted her scarf, a gesture Miss Marple noted as a mirror of her guilt. Like the St. Mary Mead heiress who clutched her pearls while hiding stolen bonds, she thought. Turning to Victor, Miss Marple addressed the letter opener. It was found in Mr. Lang's suitcase, engraved with Irina's initials, a perfect frame, but its polish bore no fingerprints, and the engraving was fresh, almost amateurish. Too convenient, like the dagger planted in the vicarage to accuse the wrong man. Victor's arrest, she suggested, was a distraction, his ambition for the egg's wealth making him an easy target. His cuff, stained with ink from the map, was a clue, but not of murder, only of his clumsy handling of Harrington's papers during their argument. Elena's role came next, her past with Harrington a festering wound. Miss Kuznetsova, your gloves held traces of blood, suggesting you touched the body. You admitted to following him, driven by revenge for his scams that ruined your career. But the stab wound, delivered from behind at an upward angle, required a taller assailant. Your limp from that old injury makes such a strike unlikely. Elena's eyes flickered with relief, then wariness, as Miss Marple continued. The note's dancer's shadow pointed to you, but as a decoy, not the killer. Like the shadow play in St. Mary Mead that misled us until the true thief stepped into the light. Dr. Ivanov shifted uncomfortably as Miss Marple's gaze settled on him. You supplied the sedative found in Harrington's system, Doctor, claiming it was a favor. Your muddy shoes, matching Red Square's soil, and the antiseptic scent on the map suggest you were near the crime. Yet your trembling hands betray fear, not guilt. You were a pawn, perhaps, in a larger scheme. His glasses slipped, and he caught them, his face a mask of dread. Pawns can be dangerous, Miss Marple thought, like the village chemist who mixed a fatal dose under another's command. She turned to Irina, her voice softening but unyielding. Miss Petrova, your fingerprints on the envelope were smudged, as if placed there after Harrington's death. You met him privately, luring him with promises of payment for the egg. Under the chaos of Red Square's lights, you struck, using the letter opener you'd taken from Victor's belongings to frame him. The note about the dancer's shadow was your creation, pointing to Elena to muddy the waters. Irina's face crumpled, her scarf falling to the floor. Nonsense, she cried, but her voice cracked. Miss Marple pressed on, her tone calm but relentless. Your nervous habit, twisting your scarf, betrayed you. I saw it that first night, and again when you wiped the letter opener clean, leaving no prints but your own smudged ones on the envelope. The ink on Victor's cuff came from your pen, used to forge the map's annotations. The mud on Dr. Ivanov's shoes. You planted it, knowing he'd been near the square for his own reasons, to cast suspicion. She paused, her eyes gentle but piercing. You killed Harrington to protect the egg's secret, not for wealth, but to hide your family's shame, the diamonds tied to treason during the Revolution, like the St. Mary Mead bride who poisoned her groom to bury a scandal. Irina stood, her voice rising to a desperate pitch. An old woman's fancies. You have no proof. But Volkov, sensing the shift, produced the pen from Irina's purse, its ink matching the map's smudges. A search of her room, prompted by Miss Marple's quiet suggestion, uncovered a draft of the cryptic note, its handwriting unmistakably hers. Irina's defiance collapsed, and she sank into her chair, sobbing. He would have ruined us, she whispered. The diamonds were my family's curse. I had to stop him. Volkov signaled his officers, who moved to restrain Irina. Elena's shoulders relaxed, her beads still at last, while Ivanov exhaled, his guilt limited to his unwitting role. Raymond stared at his aunt, marveling. "Aunt Jane, how did you see it?" Miss Marple smiled, her needles resuming their rhythm. "Human nature, dear boy, is the same in Moscow or a meadow. Motives, greed, shame, revenge, are universal, like the patterns in my knitting." As Irina was led away, the lounge seemed to exhale, the chandelier's glow softening. Miss Marple gathered her knitting, her thoughts drifting to the map's vault. "Perhaps it holds nothing," she mused, "or perhaps more secrets wait, like the hidden cachet in the St. Mary Mead Rectory." She declined Volkov's gruff thanks, her mind already turning to the train home. The Moscow lights outside flickered, their brilliance dimmed by the truth now laid bare. The egg had cracked, its hollow heart exposed, and Miss Marple's gentle hand had woven the final stitch in a tapestry of betrayal. Chapter 8. Lights Fade. The Hotel Metropole's Grand Lounge, once a stage for whispered secrets and veiled accusations, now held a quiet reverence as the echoes of Irina Petrova's confession lingered. The chandeliers, their light softened by the late hour, cast a warm glow over the velvet upholstery. But the room felt lighter, as if unburdened by the truth Miss Jane Marple had so deftly unravelled. Inspector Dmitri Volkov, his stern demeanour softened by grudging respect, oversaw the final formalities as Irina was escorted away, her emerald scarf trailing like a fallen banner. Elena Kuznetsova sat silently, her amber beads still, her face a mask of relief tinged with sorrow. Dr. Sergei Ivanov, his scholarly poise restored, adjusted his glasses and murmured a line from Chekhov. "The truth, however bitter, sets us free." Raymond and Joan West flanked their aunt, their eyes wide with admiration for the unassuming figure who had pierced the heart of Moscow's mystery. Miss Marple, her knitting neatly folded in her lap, sipped a cup of chamomile tea, her serene expression unchanged despite the drama of the evening. "It's always the small things," she said softly to Raymond, her voice a gentle thread weaving through the room's quiet. A knotted scarf, a smudge of ink, a moment of fear. They tell the story, like the crumbs left by the St. Mary Mead baker's wife, pointing to her stolen loaf. Raymond shook his head, marvelling. "Aunt Jane, you saw what none of us could. How do you do it?" She smiled, her eyes twinkling behind her spectacles. "People, dear boy, are much the same, whether under Moscow's lights or in a village garden. They love, they fear, they hide, and those truths betray them, as surely as the vicar's sister betrayed her envy with a sharpened glance." Her words hung in the air, a quiet testament to her understanding of human frailty, honed over decades of observing life's quiet dramas. As the group dispersed, Volkov approached, his notebook closed, his moustache less formidable. "Miss Marple, your insight was remarkable," he admitted, his accent thick but sincere. "We'd have pinned it on Lang, or perhaps Kuznetsova, without your clarity." She inclined her head, deflecting praise with a modest wave. "I merely see patterns, Inspector, like the stitches in my knitting. The truth was there, waiting to be picked up, like the thread dropped by the St. Mary Mead seamstress who thought her theft invisible." The following morning, Moscow awoke under a fresh blanket of snow, its streets gleaming like a canvas newly painted. Miss Marple, her valise packed, stood in the hotel lobby, her sensible coat buttoned against the chill. Raymond and Joan fussed over her, insisting on accompanying her to Leningradsky Station. The city's lights, so ominous during the investigation, now twinkled with a festive warmth, as if celebrating the resolution of Harrington's murder. Yet Miss Marple's mind lingered on the map to the Kitaygorod vault, its promise of diamonds untested. "Perhaps it's empty," she mused to Joan. Or perhaps it holds another secret, like the locked chest in the rectory that held only letters, but such revealing ones. At the station, the train to London loomed, its steam curling like a beckoning hand. Raymond, ever the diplomat, pressed a small package into her hands. A Russian nesting doll, its painted face smiling enigmatically. "A memento, Aunt Jane," he said, his voice warm, "though I suspect you'll carry Moscow's lessons home without it." Joan hugged her tightly, whispering, "You've saved us all in a way." Irina's confession spared Victor, and Elena's conscience is lighter. Miss Marple patted her cheek, her smile gentle. "Consciences, my dear, are like gardens. They thrive when weeds are pulled." As she boarded the train, Miss Marple glanced back at the city, its domes and spires half hidden in the snow. The platform buzzed with farewells, but her thoughts were already drifting to St. Mary Mead, where simpler sins, petty thefts, jealous rivalries, awaited her scrutiny. Moscow or Meadow, she reflected, settling into her compartment. The heart's shadows are the same, like the postmistress who hid her thefts behind a cheerful smile, only to be undone by a single misplaced stamp. Her knitting bag rested at her side, a quiet companion for the journey. Its contents a reminder that every tangle could be unravelled with patience. The train's whistle pierced the air, and Moscow receded, its lights fading into the snowy haze. Miss Marple opened her knitting, her needles resuming their familiar rhythm, each click a step toward home. She thought of Irina, driven by shame to murder, her family's tainted legacy a heavier burden than any diamond. She thought of Elena, freed from suspicion but bound by her past, and Ivanov, whose minor sins paled beside his fear. Even Victor, released from custody, would carry the weight of his greed. All so human, she mused, like the villagers who gather at the church fete, their secrets hidden but never truly lost. As the train gathered speed, a young porter passed, offering tea. His smile was polite, but his eyes held a flicker of curiosity, as if sensing the quiet power of the elderly woman in the corner. Miss Marple thanked him, her mind drifting to the vault. Had Irina's confession buried its secrets, or did it wait, like a locked room in a manor, for another to turn the key? She dismissed the thought with a smile. Some mysteries belong to others, she thought, and I've my own garden to tend. The Moscow lights were gone now, swallowed by the vast Russian night, but their lessons lingered in Miss Marple's mind. She opened the nesting doll, revealing smaller figures within, each a mirror of the last, like motives, she thought, nested within one another, but always leading to the smallest truth. As the train rocked gently, she knitted on, her thoughts weaving a tapestry of human nature, its patterns as clear to her as the snowflakes falling outside. St. Mary Mead awaited, with its quiet dramas and familiar faces, and Miss Marple, ever watchful, was ready to unravel its next small mystery, her gentle hand as sure as ever.